I'm Dan Drake. This is Visitor Network TV. With us today is MichaelCozort, the superintendent of the Nantucket Public Schools. Michael, welcome. Thank you for taking the time out to come and talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
I guess one of the big issues on the table for the schools right now is enrollment, and the size of enrollment and the growing enrollment. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to. When I arrived in July of 2010, the previous year, our enrollment was 1,233 students. And we use an October 1st date, which is what the state uses. And that first year I was there, we had increased our enrollment by 50 students. And we've been pretty consistently increasing by 50 students a year until this year. And we saw a jump from last October to this October of 98 students.
So you're up now to 1,400 or so?
We are up to 1,483, which is 250 students more than we had when I arrived.
And what was the capacity that the schools were built for?
Well, that's a great question, because the elementary school is now up over 670 and was probably built for a capacity of around 500. We have added modular classrooms there. The middle school is close to 350 now, and the high school is close to 450. And so what is sometimes perceived as just an elementary school enrollment problem really is a district-wide enrollment. On one end, we talk about job security, and we laugh about it and say this is a good thing. But the growth has been so rapid that we're having difficulty with the space.
Who are these people? Who are these children that are coming in?
Good question. And we have a wide range of students that are coming. Some of it is through immigration. The growth of our Hispanic population has been significant. The growth of our African American population has been significant, but we've also had growth in the white population. I think as the economy has improved and opportunities for work on the island have increased, it's brought people of
all sorts.
Yeah, of all sorts, and families, and so. It's a good thing, but it brings us challenges. And as you know, we have one modular at the elementary school, and we are adding right now and hope to have in the next month a second modular. But if our population continues to grow at 100 students a year, we don't have the capacity to meet their needs. And yet in public education, you can't put out a no vacancy sign. So,
what's the school board talking about in terms of a longer-term solution?
Great question. We had a meeting last night, and we continue to talk about the enrollment numbers and what we're going to do. We have a request for qualification out for an architectural firm right now, a school architectural firm. We will be opening that bid in this month, October 17th, and then engaging an architect to come down and do a space needs study. We want, this requires a school architect, somebody with experience in looking at the demographics and the numbers and determining how we might best provide space for our children. I have an idea of what I would see that we might do, and that's to build a pre-K to 2, grade 2 school. Number one, because it's the cheapest construction as opposed to a middle or high school where you need specialty classrooms and gyms. And then you could have the existing elementary school service grades 3 through 5 or possibly grades 3 through 6, giving some room to grow at the middle and high school. Now that I can be convinced otherwise. A school architect will come in and say, have you even considered this? Have you considered building up at the elementary school and having, one floor be pre-K to 2 and the next floor being grades 3 through 5? Have you considered building another wing to the middle school, to CPS? So I think we're open to all of those conversations, but we need to have a plan. We expect to bring something to the annual town meeting, not this coming, but the following one, a building project to the community at that time.
Other than space, what are your two biggest challenges from an administrative standpoint in the Nantucket schools?
Well, I think staffing is always a concern. We added 18 new teachers this year. That's a very large number for a small school district. That reflects primarily staff that is a veteran faculty reaching some retirement ages. But we also know that there are some people who come to Nantucket and Nantucket isn't right for them or for their family. So sometimes we have a teacher for 1 year or 2 years. Related to that is staff housing. It's a very challenging housing market out there. And teachers come in and they play the Nantucket Shuffle, and that's okay for 1 year, but it can be frustrating if they can't find a year-round rental in that second year, and sometimes we lose people to that. So I think that's a significant challenge, although we have added some wonderful new teachers, and we do offer a good salary schedule, and that's certainly related to the cost of living on Nantucket. So I think that would be a huge challenge in terms of academic progress, mathematics. Our performance on the Massachusetts assessment has not been good in the area of mathematics, and we have to look at that system-wide and target some strategies.
Isn't that an area where there's been particular turnover?
We've had some turnover, but mostly that turnover has been at the high school level.
Right.
We lost, I think, 3 out of the 5 math teachers this past year at the high school, but we've had consistency at the middle school and elementary school. And of course, when you look at scores on one test, you have to take that with a grain of salt. It is one piece of the puzzle, but we have to look at that, and there are usually multiple causes and multiple strategies that need to be put into place to see an improvement.
Give us an example.
Well, I think you need to look at what are we doing for professional development for our staff. So if we're not doing well in the area of fractions, why is that? Is that because of where fractions...
Can you get that focused feedback from the testing?
Yes. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has an excellent warehouse of performance data, and we refer to it as Edwin Analytics, and it's on the State Department's website, and it is amazing. You can get the large picture, or you can drill down to individual schools, individual classes within a school, individual teachers, or specific students. You can do an item analysis. There's a lot of data that allows us to know what areas, what classes, what schools. So professional development might be one thing. Time on task, instructional time. We need to increase our instructional time.
Is there a requirement for the teachers in terms of professional development every year that they have to fulfill?
There is a requirement over time that they have to. It's not specific to each year. And we bring, for example, we have a math class that we have brought to the island in number sense. And we're trying to develop some professional development activities in fractions because we know that that is another area. So, and then being on an island, it's challenging. Professional development is more challenging for our staff. Getting off, doing coursework in the summer is more challenging. Going to workshops during the year. So that would be one area that we would look at, but instructional time is we need to look at. Do we need to devote more time to the instruction of mathematics? And do we need to have a better evaluation system, which the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has implemented and we are implementing this year?
I guess one of the most difficult things is tracking what your graduates do, especially once they disappear over the horizon and start in college, because many change what they're going to do, from what they tell you they're going to do. And but one of the areas that's getting a lot of attention nationally are the sciences, and the dearth of people going into the sciences. Do you do anything special to try to attract students into the sciences?
Well, I think there's two parts to that question, and part of it is staff, and we have probably had more turnover in our high school science department than any other department. So that is something that contributes to that. And I think we are really looking at our vocational programming and probably going to make some significant changes in vocational education, which of course is related to science, technology fields. We have added more computer science. We are probably going to go away from the traditional one teacher devoted to auto mechanics, one teacher devoted to building trades, and we may have a half-time teacher devoted to building trades, a half-time teacher devoted to auto mechanics, so that we can offer something in nursing or the medical field, because that is a growing area of interest for our students and need for our island.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but a number of years ago, the FAA was having trouble getting tower people. You are aware of it.
I am.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things we've talked to the flying club and had some conversations with Mr. Egan about maybe even bringing an aviation course to our vocational program. And we've, in partnership with the Egan Institute, we've brought in a marine studies program into our middle school.
You have had a culinary arts program for a number of years.
Yes.
Have we got any even anecdotal information about how many of those young people have stayed on the island in terms of using the skills that they've learned in what's been a very good, successful program, I think?
It has been very successful. Bob Bacino has hit a home run with that program over the years, and we've had many of our students perform well in state competitions, and many of our students, and in fact Bob shared with me an email the other day of a student who was actually before my time, who had written him and is a sous chef. Are they on island? Not necessarily, but they are in that field elsewhere. And so I think that that's been a natural match for the vocational interests and needs of students and the island. As building trades will always be an offering, or should always be an offering in our vocational program. But to be able to broaden with aviation, with nursing, with...
You're doing the program with the Egan Institute, the maritime.
Yes, and that's in the grade 6. Andrew Bald is teaching a rotation of students in maritime studies, and he integrates all of the core subjects. He's teaching some maritime math in there. He's working with students in the history area and certainly marine science. So it's been, and the feedback already in a month has been terrific for that program.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have to ask you about French and Chinese.
I expected that. It's been an interesting conversation. Preceding me, I think that conversation began probably 5-7 years ago as our French numbers in the high school started to dwindle. And it's
Were they going to Spanish or to something else, or not, just staying away from the languages?
I think that they were going towards Spanish, and John Bucky for the last few years has added Latin, and that's been a successful program. We have a great teacher, Justin Hudek, who is a graduate of Yale and is
There's something about Latin teachers.
trained. Yes, well, he's trained in the classics.
Yeah.
And understands ancient Greek and Latin, so it's been wonderful. The move to Chinese was part of a strategic planning discussion a few years ago when we initiated that, which was to bring a modern world language into the offerings. And we had talked about bringing Chinese specifically.
The French would be very upset to hear that they're not a modern.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're a modern, but so many of our courses really are based on enrollment.
Right.
And we have to make a decision at some point, what is the offering? And we're going to give Chinese a run. We have a young lady from Beijing, and Yeping Zhu, who is teaching Chinese. Her numbers in the high school are small. Her numbers in the middle school are quite large. We're hopeful that that program will...
Is that a language you're better off starting in middle school, maybe?
Well, that's a great segue, because our approach in America to the teaching of world languages is completely backwards. You know, we talk about high school and often introduce a language in high school or middle school at best, when we know that language development occurs best in 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And if you study the teaching of languages abroad, it's done from age 4 and 5 on. And so we really need to flip that whole paradigm.